the Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation. Chapter 60. Evil, Part 1. Wang Lingzhao sat up from her bed with a scream. Wen Zhao, who was reading a letter by the desk, slammed its surface, enraged. "What are you howling at again in the middle of the night?" Wang Lingzhao panted as if she still hadn't overcome the shock. I dreamed of Wei again, I dreamed of him again. Wen Zhao, it's been 3 months since I threw him into burial mound. Why are you still having dreams of him? Just how many times has it been? Wang Lingzhao, I don't know why either. These days I've been dreaming of him a lot. Wen Zhao had already been annoyed while he was reading the letter. He didn't have the time to pay attention to her. He didn't care much for holding her and comforting her like he had used to do either. He spoke impatiently, "Then don't sleep." She got out of bed and threw herself over to Wen Zhao's desk. "Young Master Wen, the more I think about it, the more scared I am. I feel like, back then, did we make a big mistake? He was thrown into burial mound, but is it possible that he didn't die? Is it possible that he..." The vein by Wen Zhao's temple pulsated. How could it be possible? Before this, how many cultivators have our sect sent to clean burial mound up? Did any one of them come back alive? Now that he's been thrown inside, his corpse has probably rotted away already. Wang Lingzhao, it's scary even if he's dead. If he really did what he said and became a ferocious ghost and comes back to haunt us. As she spoke, both of them remembered that day, what Wei Ying's face was like as he fell, what his expression was like. Both of them shivered involuntarily. Wen Zhao immediately refuted her, "It's impossible even if he's dead. The people who died in burial mound, all of their souls would be shackled there. Don't scare yourself. Can't you see that I'm annoyed?" He crumpled up the letter in his hand into a ball and tossed it out, his voice filled with hatred. "What sunshot campaign? Some sunshot it is. Want to shoot down the sun? Dream on." Wang Lingzhao stood up. She carefully poured him a cup of tea. In her heart, she thought over some flattering words before speaking in a sweet voice. "Young Master Wen, those few sects could only keep on doing what they want for a couple more days. Sect leader Wen would definitely..." Wen Zhao cursed, "Shut up. What do you know? Get lost, stop annoying me." Wang Lingzhao felt wronged, but she felt hatred as well. She put down the teacup. Fixing her hair and her robes, she walked outside with a smile. Just as she went out the door, the smile on her face faltered. She opened up the paper ball within her hand. Back then, when she exited, she secretly picked up the letter that Wen Zhao had tossed away. She wanted to see just what news he had received for him to be so irritated. She couldn't read too well. After looking at it for a while, she could finally guess what the letter said. The eldest son of sect leader Wen Zhao's elder brother Wen Su, had been beheaded by one of the dissidents' leading sect leaders and was displayed at the tip of a sword as a sign of power in front of the battle array. Wang Lingzhao had frozen. The Gusu Lan sect was burnt down, the Yunzhong sect was destroyed, and many other sects, whether large or small, were cracked down upon. It wasn't that there hadn't been any defiant voices, but that they had always been quickly suppressed by the Qishanwen sect. For this, 3 months ago, the sects Jin, Nai, Lan, and Zhang formed an alliance and led the revolt. When they emerged under the banner of the Sunshot campaign, nobody took them seriously. Sect leader Wen spoke up back then. Among the 4 sects, the Lanling Jin sect was on the fence, watching how all of the sects were angrily going on some expedition. It wanted to take part as well, but if it suffered more defeats than victories, it'd soon realize that there was no good in it, perhaps even coming back to hug the Wen sect's leg and worship it once more. The King Nai sect's sect leader was so stiff that he'd easily snap in half. Soon afterward, no need for others to move and he'd die in his own people's hands sooner or later. The Gusu Lan sect had been burned into ruins, although Lan Zichen was here to inherit the position of sect leader after he had moved the library pavilion. He was only a junior and couldn't do anything much. The most laughable one was the Yunzhong sect, the people of which either had been killed or had scattered, leaving only Zhang Qing, who was younger than even Lin Zichen and was still a child born yesterday, who had nobody in his hands but still dared call himself sect leader, holding up the banner of rebellion as he recruited new disciples. It could be concluded with two words: unpromising and overconfident. Everyone who stood on the Wen sect's side took the Sunshot campaign as a joke. However, 3 months later, the circumstances didn't turn out the way they expected them to at all. Many places in Hejian and Yunnan had been taken over, but that wasn't the most important. Today, even sect leader Wen's eldest son had been beheaded. In the hall, Wang Lingzhao worried for a while. Uneasy, she returned to her room. Her eyelids kept on twitching. One hand rubbing her eyelids, she pressed her other hand onto her chest, trying to come up with a route of retreat. She had been following Wen Zhao for almost half a year. Half a year was the most time that Wen Zhao could spend on a woman, from loving her to becoming tired of her. She had thought that she was different, that she was the one who could stay until the end. However, Wen Zhao's growing irritation during the past few days had told her already. She was no different from the other women. Biting down on her lip, Wang Lingzhao thought for a while. She then squatted down and took out a small chest from beneath her bed. The chest held all of the valuables and weapons that she had managed to hoard during the half year of staying by Wen Zhao's side. Valuables she could spend, weapons she could protect herself with. Although she didn't want it to, the day had finally come. She wanted to count how much was in her inventory. She dug out a minuscule key from her belt and muttered as she opened the lock, "What a scum of a man! You greasy thing will die sooner or later. Now that I won't have to serve you anymore, I'm the one who should be happy." Ah! She collapsed onto the ground. Back then, the second that she opened the chest, she saw what was inside. There was none of her beloved treasures. Only a pale-skinned, curled-up child. Wang Lingzhao was so shocked that she screamed. Kicking her legs, she couldn't help from shifting back. She had always kept the chest locked. The only key she wore on her at all times. How could there be a child inside? She didn't even open it up once a month. If a child had been hiding inside, then how could she have not known? How was the child still alive? The chest had been kicked over by her. Its mouth was on the ground and its bottom faced here. For a few moments, nothing happened. Wang Lingzhao crawled up from the ground with shivering legs. She wanted to go nearer and take another look at it, but she didn't dare to, thinking to herself, "There's a ghost, there's a ghost." Her cultivation was extremely low. She wouldn't be able to deal with it even if there was a ghost. Suddenly, she remembered that this was a supervision office. Talismans were stuck outside of the gates and every house. If there was a ghost, the talismans would certainly be able to protect her. She quickly rushed outside, tore down the talisman outside of her room, and stuck it in front of her chest. With the talisman on her body, it was as though her mind had been set at ease. She snuck into the room, found a long clothing pole, and flipped the chest over from afar. Inside of it, her treasure rested neatly. There was no child at all. Wang Lingzhao let out a breath of relief. The pole in her hands, she squatted down. Just as she was about to start counting, she suddenly realized that two white lights shone under her bed. It was a pair of eyes. A white-colored child lay prone under her bed, staring into her eyes. This was the third time tonight that Wen Zhao had heard Wang Lingzhao's screams. The fire within him grew stronger as he yelled, "You bitch! You're too neurotic, can't you fucking let me be a little less annoyed?" If not for how there had always been irritating news coming in these past few days and he didn't have time to find new beauties, afraid that he found dishonest, untrustworthy female assassins from those minor sects but still wanted somebody to warm up his bed, he would have told the woman to fuck off long ago. Wen Zhao shouted, "Somebody! Make her shut up for me!" Nobody answered. Wen Zhao kicked over a stool. He was even more furious. "Where did all of you fuckers go off to?" Suddenly, the doors opened. "Wen Zhao, I told you to shut the bitch up for me, not to come in." As he turned around, part of the sentence was stuck in his throat. He saw a woman standing in front of his house. The woman's features were all distorted, as though they had been smashed and then pieced together again. The two of her eyes were looking in different directions, the left upward and the right downward. Her entire face was hideously twisted. Wen Zhao tried with much effort before he could finally manage to recognize her from her rather revealing robe. This was Wang Lingzhao. Wang Lingzhao's throat was gurgling. She walked a few steps toward him and reached out, "Help! Help! Help me!" Wen Zhao shouted. He unsheathed his new sword and sliced at her. "Go away! Get lost!" Wang Lingzhao's shoulder had been gashed by the sword. Her features were even more twisted as she shrieked, "It hurts! It hurts! Wen Zhao didn't even dare pull his sword away. Grabbing a stool, he hurled it toward her. After it hit her, it broke into pieces. Wang Lingzhao staggered before kneeling down and collapsing onto the ground, as though she was kowtowing someone, mumbling, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me go, let me go, let me go." As she knocked her head on the ground, blood dripped from her kikyo. With her blocking the entrance, Wen Zhao couldn't leave. He could only open the window, shouting his lungs out, "Wen Zhuoyu! Wen Zhuoyu!" On the ground, Wang Lingzhao had already picked up one leg of the stool, frantically stuffing it into her mouth, laughing as she did, "Fine, fine, I'll eat it, I'll eat it. Ha ha, I'll eat it." An entire chunk of the leg had been stuffed down by her. Wen Zhao was almost dead from the shock. Just as he was about to jump out the window and flee, he suddenly realized that in the courtyard, a black silhouette stood amid the pool of moonlight on the ground. At the same time, Jiang Cheng was standing before a forest. Noticing that somebody approached, he turned his head slightly. The person was dressed in all white. Wearing a forehead ribbon, its ends swept behind him along with his hair. His face, more handsome than anything, was as fair as jade. Under the moonlight, his entire body seemed to be enveloped in a soft glow. Jiang Cheng spoke in a cold voice, "Second young Master Lan." Lan Wangji's expression was solemn. He nodded, "Sect Leader Jiang." After the two acknowledged each other, they didn't say anything else. Each carrying their cultivators, they flew on their swords in silence. 2 months ago, the two Jades of Lan cooperated in a surprise attack with Jiang Cheng. They took back the swords that had been gathered from each sect's disciples at Wen Zhao's sector of indoctrination, bringing them back to their owners. Only then did Sandu and Baikan return to them. Lan Wangji's light eyes glanced at the other sword at Jiang Cheng's waist. He turned his gaze away. A few moments later, staring straight in front of him, he asked, "Has Wei Ying still not appeared yet?" Jiang Cheng looked at him, as if surprised that he had suddenly asked about Wei Ying. He answered, "No." He looked at Suobian, which hung by his waist. "The people on my side still haven't gotten news of him yet. But when he returns he'll find me for sure. After he appears I'll give him his sword." Soon later, leading a group of cultivators, the two arrived at the supervision office where Wen Zhao hid, preparing for a night attack. Before they entered, Lan Wangji's face stiffened. Jiang Cheng frowned. Dark and resentful energy was almost spilling out of the place. However, the talismans on both sides of the doors were still intact. Jiang Cheng signaled for the cultivators that he led to scatter around and hide below the walls. He, on the other hand, swung Sandu. The sword energy attacked and broke open the doors. Before he went in, Lan Wangji's eyes swept over the talismans beside the doors. The scene inside of the supervision office was more than horrifying. Within the courtyard, corpses lay everywhere. Not only there, the bushes, hallways, fences, and even roofs were piled up with corpses. All of the corpses wore sun robes. They were disciples of the Wen sect. Using Sandu, Jiang Cheng flipped over one of the corpses and saw lines of blood crisscross over the pale face, bleeding from the kikyo. Lan Wangji stood on the other side. "This one is not." Jiang Cheng walked over. He saw that the corpse's eyes had rolled back. Its face had been destroyed. Yellow bile dripped from its mouth. It had been scared to death. One of the disciples under him reported, "Sect leader, we've finished inspecting. All of them are dead. And, every corpse died a different way. Strangled, burnt, drowned, poisoned, frozen, slit at the throat, pierced at the head. After Jiang Qing finished listening, he spoke in a chilling tone, "Looks like something else has helped us finish tonight's task." Lan Wangji didn't say anything. He was the first to step into the house. The doors to Wen Zhao's room were wide open. Only one female corpse remained in the room. The corpse wore light clothes. Half of the leg of a stool had been stuffed down her throat. She had killed herself by forcing herself to swallow the stool leg into her stomach. Jiang Qing turned the corpse's twisted face over. After he had scrutinized it for a while, he gave out a cold laugh. Holding the stool leg, he shoved it into her mouth, somehow managing to stuff the half that had been outside into her body as well. With red eyes, he stood up. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Lan Wangji ponder over something, standing in front of the door. He walked over. Following Lan Wangji's eyes, he saw a yellow, red-painted talisman stick to the door. Although the talisman didn't seem any different at first glance, after taking a closer look at it, one would discover a few slight places that caused much discomfort. Lan Wangji, too many. Jiang Qing grew stern, as expected. They were able to memorize the technique of drawing this type of residential talismans when they were 15 or 16. However, amid the vermilion scrawl over the talisman, there seemed to be a few extra brush strokes. These brush strokes were the ones that entirely changed the pattern of the talisman. Now, looking at it, the talisman stuck to the door seemed to be the face of a person, smiling eerily. Wen Zhao and Wen Zhuoyu's corpses couldn't be found within the supervision office. Speculating that they fled toward the direction of Kishan, Jiang Qing immediately led the people out of the abandoned supervision office and chased after them on their swords. Lan Wangji, however, returned to Grissa first. The second day, Lan Wangji had finally caught up to Jiang Qing. He took out the talisman from last time. "This talisman has been reversed." Jiang Qing, "Reversed? What does reversed mean?" Lan Wangji, "Normal talismans repel evil. This one attracts them." Jiang Qing was shocked. Talismans could attract evil? I haven't heard of anything like it. Lan Wangji, "It is indeed unheard of. But, according to the testing, it does prove to have the ability to attract evil." Jiang Qing took over the talisman and examined it closely. Only a few brushstrokes were rotted, and the entire function of the talisman was reversed. Was this a human deed? Lan Wangji, 4 brushstrokes were added. It was drawn using human blood. All of the residential talismans in the supervision office have been altered. The strokes were those of the same person. Jiang Qing, "Then who could this person possibly be? Amongst all of the renowned cultivators, I haven't heard of any who can do such a thing." Immediately after, he continued, "But no matter who they are, it's fine as long as their objective is the same as ours, to kill all of the wind dogs." The two went up north according to the information. Everywhere they went, they heard talk of strange corpses appearing there. All of the corpses were cultivators of the wind sect, dressed in sun robes. All of them were high in both rank and cultivation. In spite of so, all of them died in gruesome yet diverse ways, and all of them had been left in the public where many could see. Jiang Qing, "Do you think that these people were killed by that person as well?" Lan Wangji, "The dark energy is quite heavy. They should have been done by the same person." Jiang Qing snorted, "Dark? In this world, could there be anything darker than the wind dogs?" They had been chasing until late into the 4th night. The two had finally caught sight of Wen Zhuoyu in the courier station of a remote mountainous city. The courier station was 2 stories tall. A stable was right next to the building. When Lan Wangji and Jiang Qing arrived, they happened to see a tall shadow rush inside and lock the doors behind him. Afraid of Wen Zhuoyu's core melting hand technique, the two decided not to alert the enemy and flipped onto the roof instead of entering through the door. Jiang Qing forced back the towering hatred within him. Clenching his teeth, he stared without a blink down through a slit between the roof tiles. Wen Zhuoyu seemed to have been traveling. In his arms was another figure. As though dragging his legs, he walked to the second floor and placed the person beside the table. He then ran to all of the windows and closed the curtains so that not even a breeze could pass through. He finally returned to the table and lit up the oil lamp. The faint light illuminated his face. It was still pale, still cold, but two dense smears of black were under his eyes. The other person by the table was covered entirely. Even their face was hidden in a gape. As though inside of a fragile cocoon, the person shivered within the gape, panting as he suddenly exclaimed, "Don't light the lamp! What if he finds us?" Lan Wangji looked up, exchanging a look with Jiang Qing. Both of them had the same confused look. This person had to be Wen Zhao. But how did Wen Zhao's voice become like this? So thin and so sharp, it didn't seem to be Wen Zhao at all. Head down, Wen Zhuyu searched through the belongings within his sleeves. Is it that if we don't light the lamp, he won't be able to find us? Wen Zhao panted, we've run so far, for so long. He shouldn't be able to catch us, right? Wen Zhuyu appeared to be indifferent, perhaps. Wen Zhao fumed, what do you mean perhaps? If we haven't outrun him, why didn't you stop? Wen Zhuyu, you need ointment. Or else you'll be dead for certain. As he spoke, he took off Wen Zhao's gape. Both of the two on the roof were shocked. Under the gape, it wasn't Wen Zhao's arrogant, greasily handsome face, but rather a bald head enwrapped in bandages. Wen Zhuyu peeled off the bandages layer by layer, revealing the skin of the bald man. On the face, scars and burn marks scattered without order, making him look as if he'd been cooked. Ugly, hideous, they couldn't see at all the shadow of whom he used to be. Wen Zhuyu took out the bottle of medicine. He first fed him a couple of round pills before he took out some ointment and applied it to the burn marks on his head and his face. Wen Zhao whimpered in pain, though Wen Zhuyu stopped him, don't cry. Or else the tears would make the wounds fester and worsen the pain. Wen Zhao could only hold back his tears, unable to even cry. By the flickering light of the fire, a bald man covered in burn marks contorted his face, strange, muffled noises coming out of his mouth. The flame was on the verge of dying, a dim yellow. The sight was beyond frightening. Suddenly, Wen Zhao shrieked, the flute! The flute! Is it the flute? I heard him play the flute again. Wen Zhuyu, no. It was the wind. However, Wen Zhao was so scared that he had fallen to the ground, wailing. Wen Zhuyu picked him up again. It seemed that something had happened to Wen Zhao's legs and he couldn't walk on his own. After Wen Zhuyu finished applying the ointment, he took out a few buns from his lapel and put one in his hand. Eat. We'll continue after you finish. With shaking hands, Wen Zhao cupped it in his hands and took a bite out of it. Seeing this, Jiang Qing remembered what a plight he and Wei Wuxian were in the day when they fled. They didn't even have any food. Such a situation was karma indeed. Heart filled with joy, the corners of his curled lifted and he broke into mad but soundless laughter. Suddenly, Wen Zhao looked as if he had bitten something that caused him react with such a petrified expression. He threw the bun away and screamed, I'm not eating meat. I'm not eating meat. Wen Zhuyu passed him another one, this one isn't meat. Wen Zhao, I'm not eating it. Take it away. Get lost. I want to find my dad. When can we get back to my dad? Wen Zhuyu, at this speed, 2 more days. His words were quite honest, neither emphasized nor faked. However, the honesty created much torment on Wen Zhao's part. 2 days? 2 days? Did you see how I am right now? If I wait for 2 more days, how would I be then? You useless thing. Wen Zhuyu suddenly stood up. Wen Zhao flinched from fear. He thought that he wanted to flee alone and was immediately scared. All of the guards died in front of him one by one. Wen Zhuyu was both his strongest and his last support. He quickly changed his words, no, Wen Zhuyu, brother Wen. Don't go, don't leave me behind. If you can take me back to my dad, I'll let him promote you to the highest level guest cultivator. No, you saved me, so you're my brother, I'll let him recognize you into the main clan. From now on you'll be my elder brother. Wen Zhuyu stared in the direction of the stairs. There's no need. Not only had he heard, both Lan Wangji and Jiang Cheng heard as well. Footsteps, one after another, came from the stairs of the courier station. Somebody was walking up the stairs, one step at a time. All of the excess blood had drained from Wen Zhao's burnt face. Trembling, he moved his hands out of the cape and covered his face with them, as though he was so scared that he wanted to cover his eyes to protect himself, pretending that nothing was happening. The pair of bombs, on the other hand, was bare, without a single finger on it. Tap, tap, tap. The person slowly walked upstairs. He was covered in black. With a slender physique, he had a flute at his waist, hands behind his back. On the roof, both Lan Wangji and Jiang Cheng pressed their hands onto the hilts of their swords. However, when the person strolled up the stairs and turned around, smile on his face, Lan Wangji's eyes opened wide, having seen those bright features before. In Chapter The Grand Master of Demonic Cultivation. Chapter 61. Evil, Part 2. His lips trembled, saying something in silence. Jiang Cheng stood up almost immediately. It was Wei Wuxian. However, apart from the face, from top to bottom, this person was nowhere like the past Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian had clearly been a bright, high-spirited boy. The tips of his eyes and eyebrows had always retained the hint of a grin, always refusing to walk properly. Yet, this person was entirely enveloped in a cold, dark energy. He was handsome, yet pale-faced, his smile eerie. The sight before their eyes was too surprising. The situation was still unclear, and they couldn't act rashly. Even though the two on the roof were flabbergasted, neither rushed inside. They only forced their heads lower and inched closer to the slit between the roof tiles. Inside the room, Wei Wuxian, clothed in black, turned around slowly. Wen Zhao covered his own face. Now, only the raspy breath of his voice could be heard, Wen Zhuyu. Wen Zhuyu. Hearing this, Wei Wuxian's eyes and lips curled up. Even now, you still think that calling him would be of any use? He walked a few steps nearer and kicked into a wet object by his foot. He looked down. It was the meat bun that Wen Zhao had tossed away. Wei Wuxian raised a brow. What, you're a picky eater? Wen Zhao fell from his stool, screeching, I'm not eating it. I'm not eating it. I'm not eating it. As he bawled, he crawled on the ground with his fingerless hands. The long black cape slid down the lower half of his body, revealing his legs. The two legs dangled from his torso as if they were burdensome accessories. Even wrapped within bandages, they were still unusually thin. Due to his violent movements, the bandages stretched out to form gaps. Inside were ghastly white bones, crimson blood and strands of flesh still hanging from them. All of the flesh on his legs had been sliced off, piece by piece. And, likely, all of the flesh had been eaten by himself. Wen Zhao's sharp screams echoed within the empty courier station. Wei Wuxian looked as though he didn't hear anything. Lifting up the hem of his robe, he sat down at another table. The second oil lamp lit up. Before the bright yellow of the flame, half of Wei Wuxian's face was in the light, the other half in the dark. He dropped his hand down. An ashen face appeared out of the darkness under the table. Soon, there came the crunching sounds of chewing. A white child squatted by his feet. Like a young, carnivorous beast, it was gnawing on something that Wei Wuxian fed it. Wei Wuxian took his hand away after patting on the white ghoul child's sparse-haired head. Holding what he had fed it in its mouth, it turned around and sat down. Hugging his leg, it chewed fiercely as it glowered at Wen Zhuyu with cold, glistening eyes. What he was chewing were two human fingers. Needless to say, they must be Wen Zhao's fingers. Lan Wangji stared at the ghastly ghost child along with a ghastly Wei Wuxian. His grip tightened around Baigan's hilt. Wen Zhuyu was still in front of Wen Zhao. Wei Wuxian's head looked down, his expression unable to be seen. Wen Zhuyu, do you really think that you can protect his dog life from my hands? Wen Zhuyu, better die trying. Wei Wuxian laughed coldly, what a loyal Wen dog. Wen Zhuliu, I can't fail to repay the debt I owe their generosity. Wei Wuxian's expression darkened at once. His voice was harsh as well. What a joke. Why is it that the debt you owe has to be repaid at the expense of others? Before he even finished speaking, from behind Wen Zhuliu came Wen Zhao's piercing wails. Wen Zhao had crawled to a corner and was trying as hard as he could to press into the wooden boards as though he could squeeze out from in between them. However, a red shadow suddenly dropped from the ceiling. A long-haired woman in red clothes, her face blue, fell heavily onto him. The dark face, bright red clothes, and black hair created a chilling contrast. Her fingers wrapped around the bandages around Wen Zhao's head and tore. The bandages were just trapped again after Wen Zhuliu had applied ointment to Wen Zhao's face. The ointment, the skin, and the bandages were still stuck together. Burned skin was naturally weak to begin with. With the violent tear, the scabs that hadn't peeled off yet tore off along with a thin layer of flesh. Even his lips were torn off. The uneven, bald head immediately became a bloody, bald head. Wen Zhao passed out at once. As soon as he heard the scream, Wen Zhuliu turned around to help him. On the roof, Lan Wangji and Zhang Cheng clenched their swords as well, prepared to attack. However, they heard another scream. The ghoul child by Wei Wuxian's feet had thrown itself over. Wen Zhuliu's right hand struck at the ghoul child's forehead before he felt a sharp pain on his palm. The ghoul child had opened its 2 rows of sharp teeth and bit into him. Wen Zhuliu couldn't shake it off, so he ignored it and went straight to Wen Zhao. The ghoul child, however, had bit out an entire chunk of the flesh on his hand and spat it out. He continued to devour the bomb. Wen Zhuliu grabbed the child's head with his left hand, as though to put so much force on the small, cold head that it exploded. The blue-faced woman threw the blood-stained bandages on the ground and, like a 4-limbed creature, she crawled to Wen Zhuliu's side almost instantly. A swing of her arm and there were 10 lines of blood. The 2 dark beings, one large and one small, wrangled with him incessantly. Wen Zhuliu couldn't attend to both sides at the same time, blundering amid the chaos. As he looked to the side and saw Wei Wuxian's cold smile, he threw himself at him. Both of the 2 on the roof frowned. Lan Wangji smacked down. The tiles shattered and the roof collapsed. Through the roof, he descended into the 2nd floor of the courier station and blocked Wen Zhuliu from Wei Wuxian. Taking advantage of Wen Zhuliu's surprise, a whip flickering with purple light swept over and around his neck, wrapping itself 3 entire times around his throat before lifting up. Wen Zhuliu's large, heavy body had been lifted up by the surging whip and was now dangling in the air. Immediately, there came the crunching sounds of his neck bones cracked. At the same time, Wei Wuxian's pupils shrunk. He took out a flute from beside his waist and spun around, standing up. The ghoul child and blue-faced woman who had been tearing at Wen Zhuliu quickly backed off to his side and stared with vigilance at the 2 strangers. Behind them, Wen Zhuliu hadn't died yet. His face flushed red and his entire body twitched, struggling against his will. His eyes were open so wide that it seemed as though they were about to burst out of their sockets. The ghoul child snarled at Lan Wangji and Zhang Cheng, not at all hiding its enmity. Wei Wuxian raised his hand slightly for it to withdraw its fangs. His gaze swept back and forth between Lan Wangji and Zhang Cheng. Among the 3, nobody spoke up. A few moments later, Zhang Cheng waved his arm and tossed something over. Wei Wuxian caught it without a second thought. Zhang Cheng, your sword. Wei Wuxian's hand slowly dropped. He looked down at Sima Bian and only responded after a pause, thank you. Again, a short while passed before any words were spoken. Suddenly, Zhang Cheng walked over and struck him, you brat. Where have you run off to in these 3 months? Although the sentence itself seemed to scold him, his tone was full of joy. Although Lan Wangji didn't step forward, his eyes had always been locked onto Wei Wuxian. With a slap, Wei Wuxian paused blankly. A few moments later, he struck him as well, ha ha, it's a long story, it's a long story. The cold air that had been on him was in some ways watered down by the 2 strikes. There was anger within Zhang Cheng's joy. He hugged him tightly before shoving him back, yelling, "Didn't we agree to meet at the lousy town down the mountain? I waited for almost 6 days and didn't even see a shadow of you. If you died it wouldn't even have been in front of my eyes. For the last 3 months I've been so busy that my head's even gotten bigger." Wei Wuxian lifted the hem of his robe and sat down again, waving his hand. "I've already said that it's a long story. Back then a bunch of Wen dogs were searching everywhere for me as well. They were waiting for me, caught me right there, and threw me to some hell of a place to suffer." As he spoke, the blue-faced woman crawled toward him using both her arms and her legs. When she had been fighting, her face was almost hideous, but now, with her dark face against Wei Wuxian's lap, she somehow seemed to be a charming concubine, obediently pleasing her master. Giggling laughter came from her mouth as well. Wei Wuxian sat leaning to one side, his right hand stroking her soft, long hair over and over again. As he watched his movements, Lan Wangji's face grew even colder. Although the scene made Jiang Cheng feel somewhat uncomfortable, at the moment, he was more shocked than anything else. What hell of a place. I've carefully asked the people in the town, so how was it that everyone said they hadn't seen you? Wei Wuxian, you asked the people in the town? They're all a bunch of naive farmers scared of bringing themselves trouble, so who dare tell you the truth? And the Wen dogs have definitely done something to shut their mouths. Of course all of them said that they hadn't seen me. Jiang Cheng cursed, those old idiots. He quickly added, what hell of a place. Gishan? The nightless city? Then how did you get out? And you've become like this. What are these 2 things of yours? They actually listened to your command. A while ago second young Master Lan and I took the task of assassinating Wen Zhao and Wen Zhuliu at night, but somebody had gone before us. I can't believe that it was you. You were the one who changed those talismans as well? From the corner of his eye, Wei Wuxian saw that Lan Wangji had always been looking at them. He smiled, pretty much. If I say that I found a mysterious cave somewhere and there was a mysterious book that a mysterious expert had left, and then when I came out I was this powerful, would you believe me? Jiang Cheng spat, wake up. You've read too many legends in those picture books, haven't you? How could there be so many experts in the world? With secret caves and books everywhere. Wei Wuxian turned his palms up, you see? You don't believe me even if I say it. I'll tell you about it if I ever get the chance to. Jiang Cheng glanced at Lan Wangji. He knew that it was probably something that shouldn't be said in front of disciples from other sects and wiped the joy from his face. All right, then. You can tell me about it later. It's all good as long as you're back. Wei Wuxian, yep. As long as I'm back. Jiang Cheng murmured the words as long as you're back a couple of times before hitting him again. You really are. You live on even after being captured by Wen dogs. Wei Wuxian gloated, of course. Who am I? Jiang Cheng couldn't help but scold him, what are you proud of? You're alive and you didn't come back sooner. Wei Wuxian, I just got out, hey? I heard that both Shaiji and you were fine, and you were rebuilding the Yunzhang sect and forming an alliance, so I went to kill a few Wen dogs first to lighten up your burden, and do some contributions. In these 3 months, you've been working hard. Hearing the last part, Jiang Cheng remembered the past 3 months of rushing about and working day and night. He felt somewhat moved, but quickly put on a harsh face, put away your shabby sword. I've been waiting for you to take it away. I don't want to be carrying 2 swords all the time and get asked that many questions any longer. Lan Wangji suddenly spoke up, Wei Ying. He had been standing quietly at the side. As he spoke, both Wei Wuxian and Jiang Cheng turned to him. It was as though Wei Wuxian finally remembered to greet him. He nodded slightly, Han Guangjun. Lan Wangji, were you the one who has been killing the Wen sect's disciples? Wei Wuxian, of course. Jiang Cheng, I knew it was you. Why did you kill them one at a time? It'd be so much of a hassle. Wei Wuxian, to play around, play with them until they die. Straight up killing all of them at once would be too easy on them. Much better killing them in front of one another one by one, one slice after another of course, With Wen Zhao, I hadn't tortured him enough yet. Wen Zhuliu, however, he'd received the guidance of Wen Ruohan and joined the Wen sect with his surname changed, protecting Wen Ruohan's precious son under his orders. He laughed coldly. He wanted to protect him, but I wanted to make him see how in his hands, Wen Zhao would become more and more distorted, unlike a man but also unlike a monster. The smile was somewhere among cold, cruel, and pleased. Lan Wangji watched with clarity in his expression. He walked one step forward. What means do you use to control such dark creatures? The curvature of Wei Wuxian's lips dropped slightly as he glanced at him. Jiang Cheng had also heard the dissonant tone. Second young Master Lan, what do you mean by this? Lan Wangji's eyes were glued to Wei Wuxian. Answer me. The ghoul child and the blue-faced woman began to stir. Wei Wuxian turned around and looked at them. They backed off slowly, reluctant, and sunk into the darkness. Wei Wuxian finally turned to Lan Wangji again and raised his brows. If you will. What would happen if I don't answer? Quickly, he ducked to the side, dodging Lan Wangji's sudden attack. He walked 3 steps back. Lance on, we've just met each other again after so long and you're already trying to catch me. That's not nice, is it? Lan Wangji moved without saying anything. Wei Wuxian blocked whatever attack he threw at him. Both of them were fast. The third time he moved Lan Wangji's hand away, he spoke. I thought that we could be considered familiar with each other. You starting a fight with me without saying anything does sound a bit heartless, doesn't it? Lan Wangji, answer me. Jiang Cheng blocked himself between the two. Second young Master Lan. Wei Wuxian, second young Master Lan, what you're asking about really can't be explained in a short amount of time. And it's kind of strange. If I were to ask you about the Gusu Lan sect's secret techniques, would you answer me? Lan Wangji walked past Jiang Cheng and came straight at him. Wei Wuxian crossed his flute in front of him. That's too much, isn't it? Why so unfriendly? Lance on, just what in the world do you want to do? Lan Wangji spoke one word at a time, go back to Gusu with me. Hearing this, both Wei Wuxian and Jiang Cheng were surprised. Quickly afterward, Wei Wuxian laughed, go back to Gusu with you? To the cloud recesses? Why go there? He immediately seemed to realize, oh. I forgot. Your uncle Lan Qiren hates crooked people like me. You're his proudest disciple, so of course you're the same as him, haha. I refuse. Jiang Cheng stared at Lan Wangji, cautious, second young Master Lan, all of us understand the Lan sect's ways. However, Wei Wuxian saved you in the cave of the Xuanwu in Dusk Creek Mountain, much less your friendship of having fought together. Now, to mercilessly denounce him straight away would be too unreasonable, wouldn't it? Wei Wuxian, look at you. What a sect leader. Jiang Cheng, you can shut up. Lan Wangji, it is not that I want to denounce him. Jiang Cheng, then why do you want him to go back to Gusu with you? Second young Master Lan, at such a point in time, the Gusu Lan sect doesn't work with the others to kill the wind dogs and is instead still hanging on to its inflexible ways. 1 against 2, Lan Wangji still refused to back off. He gazed at Wei Wuxian, weighing, for cultivating an evil path you would eventually have to pay. Throughout time, there has not been a single exception. Wei Wuxian, I can pay. Seeing how unconcerned he seemed to be, Lan Wangji lowered his voice, the path would not only damage your body, but your heart as well. Wei Wuxian, damage or not, how much damage, I know it the most. As for my heart, it's my heart after all. I know what I'm doing. Lan Wangji, some things you cannot be able to control at all. Displeasure flashed across Wei Wuxian's face, of course I can control it. Lan Wangji walked a step closer. He seemed to be about to speak again when Wei Wuxian closed his eyes. After all, on the topic of how my heart is, what could other people know about it? Why should other people care about it? Lan Wangji paused. He had suddenly been angered. Wei Wuxian. Wei Wuxian had been angered as well. Lan Wangji. Do you really have to make this difficult at such a point in time? You want me to go to the cloud recesses for the Gusulansek's confinement punishment? Who do you think you are? What do you think the Gusulansect is? You really think that I won't resist? Hostile energy formed between the two of them. Over Baikon's hilt, Lan Wangji's knuckles turned white. Jiang Qing's voice was cold. Second young Master Lan, right now, the chaos with the wind sect hasn't been stopped yet. This is the time where we desperately need forces. People don't even have the time to care for themselves. Why would the Gusulan sect be concerned about something so far away from it? Wei Wuxian is on our side. Do you want to punish our own people? Wei Wuxian regained his composure. That's right. It's all good as long as the wind dogs are the ones killed. Why care about how I kill them? The two knew how to continue each other's words ever since they were young. Now, one sentence after another, the argument flowed seamlessly. Apologies for saying something so blunt, but even if we get to the bottom of this, Wei Wuxian isn't from your sect either. It's not in the Gusulan sect's place to punish him. No matter whom he goes back with, it wouldn't be you. Hearing this, Lan Wangji's expression froze. He looked up at Wei Wuxian, the lump at his throat trembling. Before he could continue, a thin scream came from Wen Zhao at the corner. Wei Wuxian and Jiang Qing immediately turned around. At the same time, the two of them walked around Lan Wangji and toward Wen Zhuliu and Wen Zhao. Wen Zhuliu hung from Zidian. He was still struggling in agony. Wen Zhao was half dead. As he slowly opened his eyelids, he saw at once the two faces looking down at him. The faces had the same youth, the same familiarity. They had both showed him expressions of either despair, anguish, or deep-set hatred. However, right now, their faces above him had the same cold smile, the same cold eyes. Wen Zhao didn't scream anymore. He didn't try to run away either. Vapidly, he raised up his fingerless hands and began to drool. Wei Wuxian kicked him into the position of kneeling in the direction of Yang. The revealed bones and flesh rubbed against each other. Wen Zhao cried sharply in pain. It sounded especially jarring in the empty courier station. Jiang Qing asked, why is his voice so sharp? Wei Wuxian, of course they'd be with a certain thing gone. Jiang Qing was disgusted, you're the one who did it? Wei Wuxian, it's nasty if you think about it that way. Of course I wasn't the one who cut it off. It was bitten off when his woman went mad. Lan Wangji was still standing behind them, watching them. Wei Wuxian suddenly remembered his presence again. He turned around and smiled. Second young Master Lan, the following scene might not be suitable for your eyes. Perhaps it'd do you best to avoid it. Although perhaps was used, his tone sounded not in the least refutable. Jiang Qing also spoke with both respect and distance. That's right. Second young Master Lan, Wen Zhao and Wen Zhuliu are already in our hands. The task has been completed, and it's time for us to part. What goes after this would be a personal matter of our sect. It's best if you return first. Lan Wangji's gaze was still locked on Wei Wuxian, while Wei Wuxian's attention had already been taken away by his dying enemy. The eyes he looked at Wen Zhao and Wen Zhuliu with glistened, and his grin was both excited and cruel. Jiang Qing had on him the same expression. Both of them had been buried within the overwhelming pleasure of revenge. Neither had the concern to deal with an outsider. A few moments later, Lan Wangji turned around and walked down the stairs. After he went out of the courier station, he stood before the door for a long time, but he never left. He didn't know how long had passed when the silent night was ripped apart by a shrill wail. Lan Wangji looked up behind him, his white robes and forehead ribbon fluttering in the cold wind. The night had passed. The sun in the sky was about to rise. And the sun on the ground was falling. In Chapter